Oh dear, YouTube with its lag has connected me in a little beatboxing moment there, hasn't it? How very embarrassing. Never mind, how are we all? Welcome back to another episode of Folky Fridays. Today's topic is power chords. I'll say that again for people that didn't go deaf the first time I did it. Power chords. Power chords are great. They're kind of like a thing that came out of rock and a lot of distortion and needing very simple chords to distort. And you can take them and apply them to folk music, either through just having very simple root and fifth type chords, which is quite nice, gives it a kind of historical, chunky kind of feel, or you can apply them by using the open strings as your allies as well. Let me turn the speakers off because they're making a weird noise. There we go. That's much better. You can apply them and use them with the open strings as well to get some really nice chord voicings in a couple of keys where the open strings happen to work well with them. So I'm just going to wait a minute or two for some more people to turn up, and then we will get started having a look at the many interesting things you can do with power chords, and a few slight modifications of the humble power chord which enable you to do even more things with it as well. Have a little riffle through my plectrum tin and see if we've got any suitable ones. If you're out there, drop us a comment and let me know that you are watching. It's always nice to know who we've got. Right then, yeah, power chords. Normally when you build a chord, the basic kind of chord that we're all familiar with, and all the kind of humble open chord voicings that you'll know, things like G, C, and E minor, and so on. All of those chords are triads, which means they're chords that contain 3 notes. And generally when you build a chord, you take a scale and you take notes 1, 3 and 5 from that scale. So if I wanted a G major triad, for example, I'd take my G major scale, and then I'd pull out the first note, and that one the third note, and then that one the 5th note, and that would give me... And when you've got a chord like that, what you tend to do is put the root note, which is the one that the scale's built from, at the bottom of the chord, so that the ear is clearly kind of grounded. It knows what it's interpreting the other notes based on. You don't have to do that. You can invert your chord and put one of the other notes at the bottom. But generally speaking, especially for folk backing, you really want a solid key centre, and the way that you get that is by putting your root note at the lowest pitch in the chord. So if I've got my G chord like that, I've got the root, the 3rd and the 5th. The root has to be at the bottom, but the other 2 can be piled in any order. So I could have root, 3rd, 5th, root, 5th, root. Or I could play it like that and have root, 5th, root, 3rd, 5th, root. Or I could play G way up there and have root, 5th, root, 3rd, 5th. Or I could play it like that and have root, 3rd, root, 3rd, 5th, or something like that. So there's as long as you've got the root at the bottom, there's loads of ways you can pile the notes and they all sound fine. The 3rd note in the chord, hey up Brian, thanks for tuning in. The 3rd note in the chord is the one that tells you if that chord is a minor chord or a major chord. So if I've got my G major chord again, there's my 3rd, which is B. If I flatten that by a semitone, it becomes a minor chord. So that 3rd note is really, really important to the chord because it gives it its whole flavour. It makes it either a bright, cheery major chord or a dark, miserable minor one. But if you're like a rock player and you're putting a lot of distortion on something, distortion adds loads of kind of harmonic overtones, or even inharmonic overtones, depending what sort of distortion it is, to your signal. And if you've got a root and a fifth, that's a very simple waveform. A root, a fifth and a third is a bit more complicated, and when you start distorting a triad with those three notes in it, it starts to sound very muddy. When you distort just a root and a fifth, it sounds good and solid, and thus you get the kind of rock metal classic chuggy chord sound. So rock players, as things got more distorted, started really simplifying their chords and playing chords that were just roots and fifths and didn't have a third in. The stock shape for that chord is this. So it's really simple: root, fifth, root. And then you can move it around all over the place and get these kinds of things. Etc, etc. So yeah, what you want to do, if we start, let's just make an E power chord to begin with, and then I'll show you some ways you can take that and use it for folk music. The really useful thing about this shape, by the way, is because there's no third in it, it's neither minor nor major, and that means you can use it for both. So if you want E minor, it could be like that. If you want E major, it could be like that as well. So, yeah, with an E power chord, it's index finger on the 7th fret of the A string. Then ring finger and little finger go on the 9th fret of the D and G strings. So just the power chord on its own would be just those 3 strings that you're fretting. Like that. Because it's E, you can play all the strings though, because the lowest string is E, the top string is E, and E's fifth is B, so we've got our fifth there, and we've got the same one on the open B string. So actually, this shape is really, really super E, basically. It's just roots and fifths. And the place that I really use this a lot is on tunes in the key of E minor. So if we talk about a tune, let's just talk about it as if it's in the natural minor or the Aeolian mode for folkies. Our main chords would be E minor, D, C, B minor, A minor, G, F sharp diminished, E minor, something like that. And we could play all of those with power chords by just taking this shape and sliding it down. So something like that. So if I'll get one of my play along videos up. We will do. I know Brian, you like the butterfly, don't you? So let's do that one. If you want access to 25 play alongs, by the way, they're really useful. They've got the chords on the screen. They play the tune at 3 different speeds: slow, medium, and fast. And they've also got 3 different versions of the chords in karaoke style, all with chord diagrams and a full written explanation of why those work where they do, and loads of like tips you can take and apply to other tunes. So if you want to get hold of those, there's 20 of them available on folkfriend.co.uk. Hit the tab at the top right that says play alongs and you will find those. So if I go along with the butterfly and put it on the medium speed, let's put the speakers back on. So I'm just going to use power chords for everything. you can see there, just using that one shape and keeping the open strings in, you can get some really nice, nice things. A few little tips on these. Let me turn the speaker off again. A few little tips on these power chords then. If you're starting with a root note, in this case our root note is E on the 7th fret of the A string, your 5th is always on the string below if your root note is on the A string. So if my E is here with the root note on the 7th fret of the A string, then my 5th is going to be there on the 7th fret of the bottom string. In this case, that's E is the root note and B is the 5th. If you're playing in a minor key, you can usually just mainly use chords 1, 7 and 5. And if you're using power chords, 1 is there, 7's 2 frets down, and 5's on the string below where you started. So you could get away with doing most of the tune like something like that, which is really easy. One more thing on this as well, if your root note is on the A string, then your 4th is 2 frets down and 1 string below. So you've got your main chords, 1, 7, 2 frets down, down a string you've got 4, and on the same fret that you started on, but on the bottom string, you've got 5. So you can do pretty much all tunes in minor keys just using that. If you were playing in a key where the open strings didn't suit the chords that you're playing, you can still use these shapes. They just give you a very kind of chunky, almost medievally kind of effect where you've just got parallel fifths. So it's a nice thing to experiment with, and then if you build out into more standard chords after that, then it kind of adds energy because you're throwing in more high end to your chords and more notes, more emotional content. Another nice thing that you can do as well, if you're playing along with a tune with kind of standard chords, and maybe it all gets a bit too jazzy and a bit too floaty, switching back to power chords can kind of really suck out all of that floatiness, and just, it's kind of like, I always think of chords a bit like a stereo image. You know, if you add more jazzy notes to chords and they go all vague and floaty, that's very nice, but it's like they're all kind of around the edges, it's all a bit ephemeral, and then you suck it right back in, take all those extraneous notes out, just a root and a fifth, straight down the middle, and it's kind of like people have got a bit floaty and then suddenly kapow, you know, right in the middle. So that's a nice way to kind of add energy, especially if you're doing something like changing between two tunes in the same key, or if you just want to add a bit of pep to your tune the last time through or something like that. It can be actually nice to cut out a lot of the content. So yeah. Let's have a look at some other things you can do with power chords. If you're in the key of D, one thing that I really like to do is drop down to drop D. Yeah, drop down to drop D. Play a power chord with your root note being on the 5th fret of the A string. That is going to be a really nice D chord. Something like that. And from there, you can put your index finger so that it's covering the bottom string as well, and get a kind of, I call it pop punk G, because it sounds like Blink 182 or something like that. things, isn't it, I think? Anyway, yeah, so pop punk G is like that, with your index finger doing the bottom 2 strings. And then if you add your middle finger on the A string and leave, sorry, on the A on the 7th fret of the bottom string and leave the A string in as well, then you get pop punk A, which is an A sus4, I suppose, isn't it? But that's a really nice little chord progression for a sort of wistful sounding, chunky D major backing. That kind of thing. I'll show you that along with a tune as well, just quickly while I'm here. Let's have a look on the play-alongs, see what we can do that with. Munster Buttermilk, G in D Ionian, that'll do nicely. When it loads. Get on the fast. Etc. So yeah, you've got your 3 main chords, D, pop punk G, pop punk A. You can also take that power chord shape and put the index finger on the 4th fret of the bottom string, which gives you a kind of substitute for F sharp diminished, really, or like the first inversion of a D chord. But basically that chord there, it's just something that leads really nicely into G, and you can play that chord, if you've got like a big block of a chord 1 section, you can always play that chord instead of it. So instead of da 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 like D, 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 G, I'd go da 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 and just slide into the G from that one. Or maybe play da 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 da, you know, whatever. You could use it anywhere in that section, depending how fast you wanted your chord changes to go, and thus how much energy you wanted to kind of put into the tune. What else was I doing there? The other one I was doing was just using this B minor shape, which is a substitute for the D chord. So that B minor chord is those 2 fingers, the littlest 2, on the bottom 2 strings way up on the 9th fret. Then the D string's open and the index finger sits on the G string, 7th fret. However, if you're in drop D, a power chord which is just roots and fifths is actually 3 fingers on the same fret. So if you wanted to do a power chord version of B minor, you could do it like that, and you could do A, G, F sharp, E, etc. just by moving round And that can be useful if you're trying to play fast in drop D and you just need a chord that's going to sound right quickly but maybe not hold up under scrutiny. You can kind of make a little mini bar that just bars whatever note you need. So if I needed a B minor in a hurry and I couldn't find it, I might just do, I know I've got a B there in drop D, so I might just do like that. A, G, you know, something like that. It's quite a useful little thing to bear in mind. Anyway, so yeah, that's pretty much all the useful chords for the key of D. The only one that we haven't done yet in the whole chord scale, so we've got D, the second chord would be E minor, so I'll take my power chord and just shift it up 2 frets. That's the kind of E minor. It's not got a third in it, so it's either E minor or E major, but in context it's kind of E minor. And then for F sharp I'm going to do my power chord shape, but with the index finger moved to the 4th fret of the bottom string. Then pop punk G, which is a really nice chord. And then pop punk A with the middle finger there. Oh, one other thing as well, there's another really nice chord. If you look at the shape of pop punk G, like that, move that up so that it's now got the index finger on B on the 9th fret, but the shape's the same, the whole thing's moved. And you get pop punk B minor. So you can, as well as making adolescent music with that chord, you can also use it for folk tunes. It's a really, really nice B minor substitute. Works really well if you're in the key of D or B minor or even A minor. Yeah, anyway, that's about it for D major. Another thing you can do if you're in drop D and you want to use power chords, you can do tunes in D minor for a really dark but kind of tinkly feel. So again, nice strident D power chord. I'm going to assume that we're talking as if we're in D Aeolian, or as if we're playing along with a Dorian tune that isn't too clearly Dorian, so we can get away with using Aeolian style chords, or natural minor, sort of classical style chords if you like. So it would be, D's going to be my chord 1, and actually if you leave the top 2 strings in this, it sounds quite cool. You get like a D minor 13 chord. You might want to just let your little finger rest gently on the B string, because the B note is less palatable in there than the top E string is, so maybe just mute the B string with your little finger, but that'll give you a D minor 7, which is nice. That kind of thing. If you slide that down 2 frets, you've got your chord 7, which is C. If you slide it down 2 more, you've got B flat, which, assuming we're Aeolian, is your chord 6. With that one, obviously, you want to be very sure that you're muting the B string with your little finger. And then move down 1 more, and you've got more or less an A minor chord. It's A9, isn't it? Or you could add that finger and make it into A minor. But yeah, so you can slide that power chord shape. And get some really nice D minor-y type things with that. If you wanted G and A minor, you could use pop punk G, because that's neither minor nor major, having no third in it, so that'll work fine for a kind of G minor substitute in the key of D minor. You could, if you were in a hurry, just make a little index mini bar trying to cover the bottom 3 strings, and that would give you kind of G minor. And then you could slide that up to, or do it with that finger, and you'd have kind of A minor, with some extra notes at the top, like an A minor 9. Yeah, so it kind of works okay. Just make sure that you're muting the B string with your little finger. If you want a kind of better D minor chord, add your middle finger on that B string, so it's almost like you're making a D minor bar chord, like that. But just up the bar so that you've got the open E string at the top, and it makes it a lot easier to play. You can slide that down and get to a proper A minor as well, so that works a lot better. That kind of thing. With G minor and A minor, your chord 4 and your chord 5, it's nice to use this shape, the one that I used for B minor before. So I've got my 2 littlest fingers on the bottom 2 strings, 5th fret, and then I got my index finger on the G string, 3rd fret. Again, you want to mute the B string with your index finger. So that's your chord 4, and if you slide it up 2 frets, you've got your chord 5. You can leave all the strings in for that one. Do those kinds of things. So yeah, basically power chords are really, really handy. I'll show you one very last thing that's almost to do with power chords, but not quite, but I haven't put it in anywhere else yet, so I thought I'd stick it on the end of this. If you take a power chord, that's root 5th root. If you add your middle finger there, so your middle finger is going to be 1 string after the other fingers and 1 fret below the last fingers. This is a major chord, and if you move that middle finger back 1, it's a minor chord. The context that I really, really like to use this in a lot is in either E or A major. So let's have a look at E major first. If I start off on an E power chord, let's take a tune like MacArthur Road or something like that that's in E major. There's not loads of tunes in E major, but if I was playing along with MacArthur Road, my chords would be E, A and B as the main chords. So I'd use an E power chord for chord 1, and then I would take an A power chord on the 5th fret of the bottom string, just add that middle finger, so that's playing the major 3rd there. That gives me that lovely kind of shimmery A add 9 chord. And if I slide that up 2 frets, I've got B add 11. So that's a really nice chord progression that you can use for loads of stuff. Something like that. Those other chords that I'm using there are just bog standard power chords. So I've got E. My chord 3 would be G sharp minor in the key of E. And I'm going to just play a power chord there. And I'm going to let that index finger gently mute the G string. And that's going to give me a really nice, what is that? G sharp. G sharp with an E in it. G, F, E. That's the 7th, isn't it? No, the 6th. Like a G minor 13, is it? G, B. That's the minor 3rd. Yeah, I think it's the G minor 13, isn't it? Doesn't matter anyway, it's a substitute for a G sharp minor. So that's your chord 3. Chord 3 always leads nicely into chord 4. Like that. There's my chord 5. And if I slide that up 2 more and make a power chord as well, then that's my chord 6. Again, muting the G string with my little finger. And sometimes I just slide the 7th, the 7th chord. I mean, I just slide the E chord in from the semitone below, so you get like. So yeah, those kinds of things sound absolutely great, capitalising on the open strings, and they're really nice, easy changes, because your hand literally doesn't have to move from this position. Occasionally you just add that finger on. So I hope that's opened your eyes up to the world of power chords, not just for metal and rock and roll, it's good for other stuff as well. I'm not sure if I have anything else to say about these. Let's have a look at the notes. Oh, there's one more I haven't told you about, which is you can use them for A major as well. If you make an A power chord and add your middle finger to make it into a major, that gives you a really nice A major shape. Chord 2, just take your power chord up 2 frets, that gives you something B, E, which you can use as B minor in this instance. Make sure you're muting the G string with your little finger just resting on it. Move it up to C sharp, either there or there. And that gives you, well, it'd be C sharp minor in the key of A. Chord 4 is D. If your root note is on the bottom string, your chord 4 is always on the string above, on the same fret. There's my root, and if I move up a string, there's chord 4. Move it up 2 frets, you've got chord 5. For F sharp minor, you can either do it up there, or you can do it down there. As ever, if you're doing it down there, make sure your little finger mutes the G string. And then if you want to just gently slide in from chord 7, a semitone below the root note, then that'll always sound nice as well. So that's your whole chord scale for A major, all done with power chords. And just as a last thing, just because I want to play it, because it's a nice, well, say I want to play it, I want to play along with a recording of it, which is just as good if you can't find musicians. I'm going to play along with Gare the Rigger, which is a really nice polka in A Ionian, and I'll just show you what it sounds like with those AE kind of chords. I'll make sure I only use power chords for this. Oh, let me put it on the fast one. Do, do, do. etc. There we go. Yeah. Oh, thank you, Brian. Yeah, so that's about it for power chords. They're a fun little one to have a go with. If you use your spare finger to add a third, either major or minor, on top of them, then you can almost always find a nice chord for any key. And they work particularly well in keys based around E or A, because then they work well with the open strings. Yeah, that's it for this week, really. If you like that last tune, by the way, it's arranged in my book of DADGAD, easy DADGAD arrangements for DADGAD fingerstyle. I'll put a link to that in the chat right now, just in case you want to go and have a look at it. There it is. And tomorrow's video tutorial will be about a really useful scale for DADGAD fingerstyle, which I've already covered in previous Folky Fridays, but it comes with a free tab and exercises. I've added some more to the DADGAD exercises folder and updated that, and I've also made a video about how to play that scale in a bit more detail and with close-ups. So yeah, that's worth a look if you like DADGAD fingerstyle stuff. Definitely check that out. It'll be out tomorrow, 12:30. Cool. I don't think I've got anything else to say, so thank you all very much for tuning in. I'll be back next Friday talking about something else. If you've got any ideas for stuff you'd like me to demonstrate, then drop me an email. It's info@folkfriend.co.uk. Keep an eye out for the brand new Finale Guitar online shop, which is finally going to be launching, hopefully sometime next week, once I list all the products on it, which is probably going to take me ages. Don't think there's any other news, so I will sign off. Thanks very much for tuning in. Thank you to Brian. Thank you to the other people. I will see you all next week for more folky guitar.